classroom. The reason why students Mark and I have been talking about this for a while of going from I don't know do this with our students. Here's what I because we notice something when students come in there, class, like this big gap. It was almost like students will come in and wait for us to just tell them from what I don't know is to, and then they will here's what I believe about this thing. And that's very disappointing there because like once you guys get out of college, like students, here's what happened waiting for us. Got a lot of employers what the truth for employees. And then they will just take that. Complaints that they have. That's very disappointing because we graduated students who are now in the job force. Here's what happens: that you guys got a lot of employers. They give you a bunch of instructions for how to do the biggest complaints that they have about that job. You only graduated the letter of you are now in the job force. But if there's a problem, you guys don't know how to think, and you go, okay. If they give you a bunch of instructions for how to do a job, and then I'll do that job. Almost it's one of the things that they say. Separate the problem, the thinkers, the movers, the future, there's a problem to you, Mr. Boss, you have from to just it out, a pool and then I'll just do that. And I'm assuming things that they say out of here and separate the thinkers, the movers, you don't want your leadership of the business you have to do from just a pool of workers. Not only is it a business concern, but we have lots of things in our society that need to have problems. There are problems that need to be solved. And we don't seem to have a number of people who are going into public service anymore where they can solve problems. There is an article in it coming up in September's edition called the Neoliberal Arts. And what it says is colleges have sold themselves out to the business model and they've stopped teaching the kinds of things that you guys actually need in order to be successful in your life. One, there are lots of professors who say, I have all kinds of other things I'm responsible for teaching, like content. So if I'm teaching a sociology class, I'm responsible for teaching you all of the terms and all of the things that have happened in sociology. I wouldn't even begin to know how to teach you how to think or how to put pieces together so that you can come up with your own decision. Kinds of things that you guys actually need in order to be successful in your lives, like critical thinking. So, Mark and I have been talking about this for a while, like I said, and we decided we would start doing more of this in the classes. The administration has decided, by and large, what they're responsible for is getting you through your program. So, if someone in your program happens to teach you some critical thinking and you get to practice that because they've given you lessons to practice it, fine. If they don't, fine. We still need to make sure we're going to get paid. We've turned our education model into a business model. So now you're the customer, you as the customer need the satisfaction of getting a degree, so we will do whatever we need to do to get you through so you can get the degree. And we have, as a society, been talking mostly about becoming good workers instead of becoming good people and good citizens. What we're going to do today is spend some time talking about an issue that you read about. You read and you have a gut reaction, right? So you listened to the podcast, you wrote your notes, and then you came up with, just from my gut, this is how I feel about this right now. Yes? More nodding. I need more nodding. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do next, because we've got a lot of stuff I want to do with you. What we're going to do next is, as a group, I want you guys to talk for a few minutes. We'll go through each of these sections, and you'll notice that I took the podcast, and I broke the podcast down into different sections. So this first section is when it's right at the beginning of the podcast. They're talking about Dr. McNutt's, yes, McNutt's, educational experience, military experience, and developing the product. Right? The second, or Dayton Part 1, will be when they first go to Dayton and ask to do the test, and what happens with that. Then when they start talking about Juarez, Mexico in the podcast, I want you guys to give us the notes for that. So what happened during this section? The second part is Dayton Part 2, when they go back and they have the public forum and everyone's talking about whether they should do this citywide or not. This part is the opinion section. So if you're in this group, for the entire podcast, whenever somebody comes up with an opinion that's for having this technology, then that's what you guys are going to be responsible for. And then the against section will be throughout the entire podcast. Whenever someone came up with opinions against having the technology, I want you to write that down, okay? So what we're trying to do is go from the notes that you took, come up with what happened in each of these sections, okay? Because when you're doing critical thinking, for those of you who know anything about critical thinking, what do you think the first step is? You get a piece of information, what's the first step? Because you're trying to understand, right? So the first thing we have to do is, you heard something, but now you need to make sure you actually understand what you heard. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to develop a class understanding of what this podcast was or is. Okay? All right, here we go. So the first section, military product development. Yay! And you're the only one. Okay, so what's your group name?
Team 1.
Team 1?
Team Uno.
Has military product development. Moving on to Dayton Part 1. All right, ladies, what do you have? What's your group name? Okay, opinions 4. Okay, so you guys are just giving up. Just whatever. What's your
Money team.
My team?
Money team.
Money team. I like how you're like, no. Okay, so what's your pick one? Alright. Section. So if you're skeptical about anything, like you heard a piece of information and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure about that piece of information, turn that into a question. If you honestly understand something, like I listened to this part, but I don't understand what was happening, write that question down, okay? Those are the 3 things. You're going to summarize, you're going to pick out the argument for your section, and you're going to come up with some questions for that section. Any questions about that?
Cars that were connected to another murder, to another car that was connected to a different one, and they all led back to the same cartel headquarters. And that one headquarters, the leader of it, sent out like 1,500 murders in that year.
Yep, that cartel was responsible for 1,500 murders, they determined. And you're right, one police officer gets shot, and as they follow the cars, they see that there's this huge web of cars that were committing crimes. It's like 16 that same day,
16.
right? And then they all went back to the cartel house.
We also talked about how it would help the U.S. and Mexican military infiltrate the cartel and crime organizations.
Right. That's where this issue started to be raised, the cartel issue. So I'll put that there. Okay, and we'll come back to the questions in a second. So the public was very divided. The majority wanted more info. So they were confused, couldn't say yes or no because they had questions. But then there were other things that happened. So we have 25% of the people said yes, we would be willing to do it. 15% of the people said no, we shouldn't do it. They had serious, serious problems. And then the rest were people with questions. So what happened for this one in the end? Did they vote to do it or not? Voted not to do it, right? Because the 15% went crazy with their questions. Anything else need to go in this section? I'm going to try and move us along a little bit. Opinions 4. Who did this one? Okay, so you guys got all the arguments for doing this thing, right? Okay, so the main argument, it solves crimes and it saves lives. How'd you get controls traffic? Okay, but anyway, from the end of the thing when they're doing traffic.
They said they could also use it for traffic control.
Okay. It was the primary tool to capture the cartel. Less money spent on police force saves taxpayers money. Did you guys hear any other arguments for this one? What about when they started talking about this whole safety versus freedom thing? What were those arguments? No, there were arguments for on the safety versus freedom thing.
Yeah, I mean, it provides more safety.
Okay.
But, I mean, it infringes upon people's, you know, like, freedom and safe and privacy, yeah, there you go.
And then the argument that people gave, there was a very specific argument they gave about that. Yeah, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say like the more security they have, like the less privacy they have.
But that would be like against.
Yeah.
They did give an argument for, when they were talking about, you know, this seems really weird. There was one person in there who said, what if this tool gets used for divorce lawyers who are trying to track down, you know, if there's cheating going on so we can sue. Right, real estate agents or landlords trying to spy on their tenants, trying to see what they're actually doing. And that person said, I can see this going overboard if we use this tool. Yes, the technology can do stuff for us, it can make us safer, but what is it going to cost us in order for that to happen? So that came up in the middle somewhere, and then someone gave an argument for having it anyway, because safety is more important than freedom. What they essentially said was, if you can't go outside and do anything, then you're not really safe or free. And so having this eye in the sky gives you the kind of safety so that you can be free to go outside and not be assaulted, right? Now, this doesn't mean we agree with it, but we have to point out that this is the argument that goes in this area, right? Understanding what's happening means you also have to understand the parts you might not agree with in your gut, you know what I mean? So let's write that one down. So, safety, better. There's about 144,000 people in Dayton, Ohio. Find out how many people live in West Palm Beach, just so we can have a comparison. Yes.
102,436.
Live in the city of West Palm Beach. So,
2013.
Yeah, 2000, that's 2013.
2013. Okay, so both of those statistics, 2013. So Dayton and West Palm Beach are about the same size, give or take, right? Dayton may have 50,000 more or so, but they're about the same size. Okay, 28,000 crimes in a city that has 150,000 people, 144,000 people in it. Does that sound like a lot to you?
Yes.
Yes. Look up the crime statistics, if you can find them, anybody, for West Palm Beach. And did anyone find the crime statistics for Dayton, Ohio? Did you get any other source that said something different than 28,000? Yes.
The crime,
Yep.
it says, I lost it.
It says,
It's like 60, sorry.
with a crime rate of 55 per 1,000 residents, West Palm Beach has one of the highest crime rates in America.
So 55 per 100,000?
Per 1,000.
Per 1,000. Okay. For the city of Dayton, yep.
The murders are 23.3, 16. It ranges. It ranges from
5,600.
exactly. There we go.
For what? For West?
Dayton,
For West Palm?
West Palm.
So 5,000 crimes.
4,000 in Dayton, Ohio, and 1,700 in just the city, in just all of Ohio.
Okay. For Dayton, I've looked this up in a couple of spots. For Dayton, Ohio, the crimes, all crime, total crime per year is about 8,894, I think, somewhere around there, okay? So some sources say 921, some say the 800, something around there. Okay, so that's what you found too when you looked it up. So where's this 28,000 coming from? He said 28,000 crimes per year happen in the city of Dayton. but we've looked it up, and anything we found has not been anywhere near 28,000 crimes.
I think it's more like a scare.
Or it could be like certain things are adding up and then all together, like there could be some kind of maybe like a rape over here and like something over here and like there's all little different pieces to the puzzle that create the entire
He
picture.
said total crime
Right.
in the city of Dayton per year is 28,000.
But one of those might be arrests versus charges. Like we've
Yeah.
arrested 8,000 people, but if you charge each people with 10 things, then we get 80,000 crimes.
Perhaps you can say I arrested.
That you need those stats.
But the language, because I looked it up using the language that he used, and he said total crimes. But you're right, the way he defined total crimes might be total arrests, and those arrests, think about it this way too though. A person might be arrested and charged with a bunch of stuff, and then the charges could be dropped, right? So you were arrested, but then it didn't go through and it didn't get prosecuted, so it's not actually a crime at the end, it's an arrest.
So
Yeah.
you're making, this is the critical thinking part.
This is the critical
So-
thinking part.
I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to get to because you're giving us the whole runaround. You're giving us like the eagle eye going around in circles, but you're not giving us the exact information inside.
But I'm
of
not
it.
supposed to. I'm raising the question, right? And the question is this, can we trust the 28,000 crimes? Do we have enough evidence by looking up something on our own to at least raise the question that perhaps the 28,000 crimes isn't exactly what we think it is? Why do you think he would say 28,000 crimes? Yes. We're supposed to believe that there is a huge problem.
Because the safe person choices is feeling safe. Because that's true. Yeah, and I'll get to that in a minute.
And it's been nuts. It's right. He owns this company. What does he want to do? He wants to sell this contract, right? And so if he wants to sell this contract, he has to show people that this problem is a big
And
problem.
luckily for him, most people won't back check.
No one's going to go back and go, really, 28,000, that sounds big. How do we know that crime exists in our society? Probably because we see the news. If it bleeds, it leads. That's the first thing you put on, right? So I want to show you the most tragic, the most, whatever's going to make you glued to the television for the first 15 minutes of a newscast. Because the other 15 minutes we're going to do weather, and there was a panda that was born in the zoo, and that kind of stuff, right? The first 15 minutes of that 30-minute newscast, I want you glued to the set. So I'm about to show you every crazy, scary thing that happens in our city so that you will be freaked the hell out and won't go anywhere for the next 2 days. And you watched us and we got great ratings and our advertisers love us, right? So we already generally as a society believe that crime is this huge problem. If I go outside, something probably will happen to me because something always, with people who already believe that crime is a super huge problem in their society, and they'll go, yeah, that makes sense. Do you see how that works? Yeah, there are questions back there.
The thing is about this is they want to exaggerate or make it seem like it's such a big deal when it's really not that big of a deal. This is why I don't watch the news because the news will they'll do
They don't cover the
above and beyond what's not supposed to be said.
There's not a lot of balance, and you have to keep the balance.
And they would get stabbed. No one walks up to a police officer and goes, what you're doing is wrong, because then you get arrested and held in jail for 3 days. And then 3 days later, they're like, oh, we didn't have anything to arrest you for, but we did just waste 3
We'll
days
let
of
you
your life.
go, right, but you
Yeah,
did sit in jail for 3
and you
days.
still do have an arrest on your record. So if they search in their laptop that is in their car, that they can Google your face and link to your Facebook profile, and then they can know your Facebook profile or your Twitter just by looking at your face with a camera that's on every street corner. They know whether or not you were arrested, but it doesn't, they have to really kind of click on it to know if you were charged. They just know that, hey, that person was arrested, which creates this whole mentality of that there are good guys, the cops, and bad guys, drug dealers. When they're not, you can have evil priests and noble thieves.
Right.
It's just a bunch of actions, and without privacy,
Well, you
you have no freedom.
You brought up a good point about we give away our privacy for nothing. all the time. Because we want to load the Candy Crush game on our phone, we won't read through 7 pages worth of privacy rules, right? We just click agree and go on. Whatever we want to get when we want to get it, we're willing to give our privacy away in order to get that thing. So easily, right? Why do we do that? But how many other things do we give up? By not even reading. So on the one hand, we talk about how much we want to cling to our privacy, but on the other hand, we will freely give it up for gifts and gadgets, right? So think about that. We look at this stuff and we go, oh my gosh, how did they get to this point, right? You were saying, there are laws out there that are supposed to keep this thing from happening. How is this happening? It happens because we've already started chipping away at our own privacy by giving it up for nothing. So if you're going to give it up for nothing, the cops don't see that big of a jump between what they're doing and what you're willing to do. Is it right? That's the question. But do we do it? Yes. We give up our privacy. And we have to start asking ourselves, when is the tipping point? When have I given up too much of my privacy? Right? Go ahead.
Well, for the whole privacy thing, Apple iPhones, when you click agree, they record everything you say, every text message, every picture you take, anything you say into that phone, put into the phone, is sent back to Apple headquarters and just stored into a computer. And
and corporations sell off your information all the time. It's not even just the government is coming for my privacy kind of thing. Corporations sell off information all the time. Actually, big data, which is what that's called now, big data is the hot ticket item on the market. Corporations, if they can get information about everywhere you go on the net, the things you like to purchase, the things you like to do, who your past 5 boyfriends or girlfriends were, any of that information that will help them get money from you, they want that information. And also, the government will go to places like Google, Apple, Netflix, wherever they can get information about you, and they will get that information. The government will say, you have to tell us, I want all of the text messages from these 10,000 people over the last 30 days. And they will claim it's because they're trying to find someone. Usually they try to link it to terror or homeland security or national security. And this is why we need this information. But they are collecting thousands and thousands of pieces of information on you, and they're holding that information. Do you care about that? Actually, I'm asking you, do you care about that?
but you can't do it.
Yeah, you can't do anything.
You can't change their minds on